Hello and welcome to IMpower 2023, and I'm delighted to be joined by an impressive panel of ladies who are here to talk about the new initiative at this year's event, Women Mean Business. And of course, this is an area that you all feel passionately about in this industry, advocating for women and particularly in senior roles. So just firstly, Davina, if I could start with you, what state of play do we have at the moment in terms of gender bias and the stereotypes within companies, and what progress have we seen in perhaps the past 5 years?
Sure. So I think the first thing to say is that there is still gender bias in the industry. I also think that there is still, in terms of percentages across the industry, particularly in senior management positions, but even more so in C-suite positions. I think the ratio of women is still way below where it needs to be. And I think that comes from a number of different areas. I think one is in terms of knowledge of the industry and how younger women enter the industry and knowing what asset management is and knowing where you could add value in that space. I think the second one is still around networks. And it might be controversial, but I still do believe there are, the informal male networks are a lot more prevalent still than the women's networks. And I think that does, in itself, you can say whether it's an unconscious bias or a conscious bias, but I think the biases do still exist. And I do think that in our industry, we still have people that recruit people in their own image. I've mentioned C-suite, but I think also in the investment space as well. So I'd say they're the two areas. On a positive side, I think there's an amazing buzz around the FundForum this year. And I attended the first Women Mean Business lunch earlier, an absolutely essential, compelling topic. But rather than talk about that, I think just the number of women in the room and the sort of the energy that could be harnessed there, I thought was an excellent initiative.
Good to hear. Veronique, I saw you nodding away there. You obviously believe there are still those problems with some biases and stereotyping that do exist too.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the percentages of the women managing assets in the industry is quite scary, actually. There's only 10% of women managers responsible for assets, managing assets. And when we know that it's going to be about 60% of the wealth in the UK held in women's hand by 2025. So there are definitely a lot of opportunities here to try to grow women in the industry. And it's essential to be able to respond to that new demographic as well of clients. Because a woman reflects better also in terms of women investing and getting advice in the wealth space especially. But it's very difficult to be able to recruit the younger generation into our industry. And sometimes we've asked ourselves, why is that? And a lot of them are already, the finance world is a very competitive and very high pressured environment. And when you ask them if there's a gender gap, that they're coming into a very pressurized environment, and also they're starting on the back of the starting block. It's too much to cope with. So they're probably not wanting to join because of these reasons. So we need to do something about it.
Gillian, do you see, obviously, what Veronique described there as that gender gap, and also, I suppose, there is the phrase, you need to see it to be it. We need to see these women in senior roles and have that for young women coming into this industry to see.
Yeah, completely agree. I think the more senior female role models that we can have across the industry, the better. But we then have to actually, it sounds very cliched, but have a voice, but use it. So many women are nervous about doing things like this. It's like, I just don't have enough confidence. And so I think we need to continue to make sure that women are seen at the forefront and that are given opportunities, that they take them as well. And I think that's partly around training and education as well. It's about enabling women to take part in things like this, to present on panels, and I think one of the challenges I still see is that it feels to me like it's quite diverse at the lower end. So I see at entry point some fantastic young women and girls, if I could call them that, joining our industry. But it's what do we do then to retain them, and to keep them later on. So,
grow.
you know, will this just take a generation to work its way through? I'm not sure. You know, how many women, do we really know how many women we actually lose at that middle stage who don't come back for whatever reason? And that it's not just as well about looking after younger children. It could be people like me who have elderly parents that we're trying to, you know, look after and support as well. So I do think that we're doing a better job, I think, in terms of that entry level, although there's still a lot of myths to bust, right, about diversity of you know, background, of the type of qualifications that you need to join our industry, all of that, which is something I love to talk about, as you know, and I think we need to continue to do that sort of work with younger women, encouraging them. But for me, the gap is, how do we retain them?
In terms of retention, one of the ideas that's been talked about a lot and put into place in some businesses, and in fact has been something organisations like Level 20 or 30% Club have talked about a lot, is mentorship. And that's having women like you and men who are advocates sort of talking and supporting these younger women that come in. Tell me about that and what opportunity you see there, Davina, for more of that mentoring and sponsorship type programmes.
Well, I think that the two absolute essentials are role models and mentors. And without going into detail about mentoring programs and, you know, the importance of male allies in this space, I actually think from a personal perspective, if I look over my career and what's been essential to me to retain myself in the industry and to get to C-suite, it's having mentors, not in a formal mentoring program sense, but mentors who I've been able to look up to, that have either been managers or managers of managers, or just people in the industry that I've said, hey, I really like what that person does. I wonder how they got there, and reached out and kind of had that kind of relationship. And if I go all the way back, I guess, to the beginning of my career when I was in wealth management, you know, having one lady there who was, you know, someone I looked at and I thought, wow, she's really nailed it. She knows who she is. She knows what she's doing. She's got the confidence. And without asking, she took me under her wing, and I guess saw some potential in me. And we actually set up a women's mentoring program between the two of us. And I was maybe 2 years into working then, and she had a number of years experience. But, you know, that kind of real life mentoring, rather than just having a chat or a coffee or whatever it is, but actually getting the young women in the business involved in initiatives that they can feel empowered and accountable for, that they might not have in their career for another few steps, I think is really important. And there's plenty of places that we can do that.
And presumably that feels really rewarding, Veronique, if you can offer that to a younger person, if you can think back to your younger self and say, it's all right, you're going to be okay, and these are the reasons why.
I wish I had a mentor when I started in the industry some years ago. But I didn't, and I thought, you know what? I'd love to for the young ladies to be able to come in. So I've got to be the change you want to see, for instance. And I had to overcome personal fear of public speaking or anything like that, or be visible to say, you know, if I can do it, anyone can, really, to be able to show that it is possible. But also mentoring is fantastic in terms of building that network you mentioned. Men have had that network for a long time. I think we need that. We need to show support with each other, not compete against each other. We need to really help each other. And the mentoring side as well helps create that support group that can benefit from the older, the younger, the whatever it is. But also you learn from each other. If you've been in the industry for a while and you're mentoring some young ladies that are just starting in the industry, you're looking at helping each other and teaching each other the new trends, and also you teach them the basics and
And that's something
financially is very important as well, to be able to keep current and to make the right financial decisions.
And that's something Gillian touched on as well in terms of developing those skills. It's about sort of education and leadership development as well, isn't it? You know, having the confidence to be on stage, to be hosting a panel. That's key to making sure that you're not just mentoring, but you're teaching.
Yeah, no, completely agree. So I'm on the advisory board for Women in Asset Servicing. We, as part of that, on our new website, have a mentoring hub where young women can go online and look at the various mentors that are available. So I actually firmly believe that you can absolutely have more than one mentor. And I think also sometimes when young women contact me, it's like, could you have a coffee with you because I want to learn about it. And I come to me with a purpose, think about how I could maybe benefit you. Because I might be able to benefit you in one area, but there's other people that can help you with other things. And I think that's really important as well for these young women to think about not just one person. And sometimes even having a mentor outside of the industry can be equally helpful, just somebody who's in business life. And I think let's not be closed-minded about who could be a mentor for you. But like you say, I've certainly mentored a number of young women in my time, and I have learned so much. But you get so much reward from them as well,
And there is a specific skill set that needs to be nurtured, isn't there? So that's mentoring and leadership training. On a very practical level, what are we doing to facilitate women in the workforce more now than we have been? And is that moving in the right direction in terms of perhaps flexible working? Obviously, a pandemic meant we were forced to work virtually more, work from home more. What are we seeing in that area, and how helpful is that as well, Davina?
I think it's essential. I don't think it's necessarily about childcare or elderly parents, or it's not about one thing. It's about enabling people to work in the best environment for themselves. And of course, there are those elements that I've just touched on. But I think from a neurodiversity perspective and from how women might be more comfortable in the workplace, I think being able to be, remote working, agile working, flexible working, all of these things. So I've benefited from working remotely sort of one day a week throughout most of my career, which has been quite unusual, I think, for a lot of firms. But now that, if I only worked from home one day a week, that would be weird, wouldn't it? Most people are working 2 or 3 days sort of remotely. And I think that's enabling people to completely change their mindset. I remember having a conversation when I was based in Singapore about, flexible working and how you can support people from a flexible working perspective about 5 years ago now. And all of the other women around the table said, I don't need that. I've got someone who does my washing and my childcare. And for me, it's not about that. It's about enabling the talent to achieve what they can achieve in the best way.
I suppose weirdly, if you are breaking down the very traditional structures, that in itself is breaking down the sort of intrinsic barriers in many ways as well. You're fundamentally changing the way that we work across the board, and that's helpful to a younger generation potentially coming in as well.
But the younger generation is demanding as well.
Yeah.
Those type of assets. They're not looking into making money as such. They're looking for a lifestyle. That's what they are demanding from a corporation as well nowadays. It's not just the pay gap, the growth, the whatever. It's can I work from home? Can I have those flexible side? So they realized that it wasn't just about monetized aspects of a work life. It was all the rest. So we don't have a choice, but we have to adjust, which is great. It's progress. I think they might got something right.
I think so.
You work to live or you live to work. There's kind of that balance.
I think what's also interesting, if you think about it, post-COVID, yes, we've all become much more flexible. We've all introduced various policies. But actually, it's not just women that are working flexibly. So we're not just seen as, it's those women that are behaving like that.
So
or
it's more acceptable.
We're seeing many more men working, 2 days a week at home or whatever their work pattern is. And I think that helps as well, massively. Absolutely. So it's no longer a male-female thing. I think that's so important.
But I think you have to, in terms of having this flexibility also, or having that neurodiversity you're talking about. When I had my children at work, I worked also from, you worked from coming to work at 9 in the morning until 8 at night, for instance. I know it was quite lax. But when you have children, you go at 9 and you have to leave at 5 to go and pick them up from nursery or something like that. And then you feel bad because you leave early and people look at you in a different manner. Although you've done your whole day of work probably more efficiently than someone else that arrived at 8 and stayed until 8 and has the same amount of workload than you do. But you have to train each other. It's good to hire neurodiversity people from different backgrounds, but if you don't train everybody to respect each other's point of view or to go about it, you're not going to have the right effect and everybody's going to feel miserable.
You've got to break down the very traditional image of what is a working day as such.
So you need to harness that difference.
You mentioned the P word, the pay word, Veronique, a minute ago. Where have we come to there in terms of pay equity, and how important is that when women hear stories of having to work for 2 months of the year for free? You know, what do you see in terms of actually this is so unfair? This is I'm not willing to work that hard to be treated like that, Gillian.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think we're making progress. But I think we've got a way to go still. Yeah, and I think we also need to make sure we don't confuse the two in terms of gender pay gap, because it's actually illegal not to pay two people who are doing the same job the same amount, right? So I think we need to get our heads around how gender pay gap is calculated, yep, and why it therefore looks different. And I think a lot of that is about things like women typically come back and will work, if they've taken time off for a family, they'll work part-time, or they'll maybe take a step back because often it's also their choice. So I think we just need to make sure we understand what the gender pay gap actually is. But my view, and maybe I'm just an ever the optimist, I do think we're beginning to make a bit of progress. But it's about more women getting into senior positions, isn't it? It's back to that.
It's back to that. I think that's a huge thing. But I also think it's the female mindset around asking for more money. So I think there's a definite behavioural piece, imposter syndrome. Maybe controversially, I'm you know, the Lean In is still a book that I will refer to or refer some of my mentees to, because actually there's quite a lot in there about, you know, how guys might approach a pay rise or a promotion versus how the ladies might do as well. And I've got, you know, a fairly recent example of just last year, who's someone I've informally mentored for the last 15 years. So she's not new to the industry in any way, shape or form. Went for a new job and rang me up and said, how do I negotiate a salary? What do you think I should do? How far should I go? And even, the pay band was this, but she's already on more. Is it okay if I say that? Well, you're damn sure it's all right that you say that. But it's still that kind of, should I be asking? And, it's that personal kind of, if I want it for me, it's harder to ask for it when you're a woman versus a man. It's still there.
Changing that mentality.
Do you think you have to be more manly to be able to work in this industry or not?
I think. Yeah.
What is the answer?
I wouldn't say that. I'd say confidence. Yeah. I'd say familiarity. And I'd say great networks.
Yes.
Yeah, I think confidence is a really important piece. If you just think about being at meetings, women tend to sit back, and they find it harder to break into the conversation. And actually some coaching on that can be really helpful, because there's some really simple techniques that you can use to break into conversations. I think that's back to your point on how can we ensure that these women have the right training and education.
Yeah, but it's not so much the woman that needs education, it's the rest of the room also that needs to understand how to embrace another person's point of view.
So just finally, on that note really, what would you say, in a couple of sentences, would be your key thing to creating those supportive organisational cultures that are at the root of what we've been talking about? So what would you say are the key things that you'd like people to take away if they listen to this panel that still need to be there and need to be better established?
I'd start with women supporting women. And then an understanding of different behaviours and approaches. And I think it's a general neurodiversity thing, but I think there's a specific female piece. And don't be afraid of having targets either. So don't recruit people because of a target, but have a target in mind to make sure you recruit the right person for the job and give everybody a level playing field to be able to do that, or indeed to be promoted into those kind of senior management and C-suite roles.
Veronique, what would you like to see happen in a couple of sentences?
A couple of sentences. I think, in terms of pay gap, to come back to pay gap differences, women are normally paid 30% less, but they spend 6% more than a man. So if you want to solve the economy, just pay women more, they'll spend it more, I could sort it out.
That's problem solved. Gillian, just finally from you.
I think it's just about understanding that we're different, right? There's this, men are from Mars, we all know that. But what are these differences and how can we embrace them in the workplace, right? And I think that's so important. And that's education right across all levels of management. Why are women different? How do we need to treat them differently? And I don't mean we want to be, ostracized as something that's, a problem, right? It's about understanding that we come from a different place, we speak differently, we tell different stories. we want to be treated probably differently, and therefore how do we actually make sure that right across our organisations that's embraced?
Let's celebrate that and make sure businesses are benefiting from it. Well, it's been brilliant to talk to your fantastic insights and watch this space. I think you three alone are going to make real changes. So thanks so much for sharing those with us.
Thank you to Albie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.